we have the UAW announcing that they are expanding the strike. And some of the details here are really quite interesting. Put this up on the screen. This is from Jacobin's reporting. So as of Friday, they announced 5,000 more members of the United Auto Workers at 38 parts distribution centers for Stellantis and GM walked off the job. Those facilities spread across 20 states. So you'll note they did not increase the strike on Ford. And the reason being, apparently they've made a lot more progress in their negotiations with Ford, where the union enjoys a better relationship, and there's been more of a give and take, and apparently Ford has already met a number, although not all of their demands. So they did not escalate at Ford. They are only escalating at Stellantis and GM. So they say those 5,000 workers joined the 13,000 that were already out at assembly plants in Ohio, Michigan, and Missouri. One of the things that I thought was really interesting here and shows the savviness, I guess, of this stand-up strike strategy that they're using, where instead of everybody going out at once, they're picking and choosing and sort of, keeping the companies off balance and showing that they can extract more pain from the companies if they want to and if they're not getting what they need at the negotiating table. So they added these parts distribution centers to the mix. That is apparently a very profitable part of the company's business. They sell after-sales spare parts and accessories to dealerships. Shawn Fain talked to Labor Notes, and he said, why strike those parts distribution centers? Well, there's several reasons. One of our issues is ending tiers. The parts distribution centers are a big example of that. Their wages were capped at $25 some years back during the greatest times in the history of these companies, and that's got to change. So that's part of why they're going in this direction, to make a point about the unfairness for the workers at those particular facilities. Let's put the map up on the screen so you can see how widespread this strike is. So they started with just a handful of large-scale facilities, and now auto assembly plants where they actually finish the products. Now you have these parts distribution centers, which you can see are literally all over the country, coast to coast. So, from there's, you got Connecticut, you got DC area, you've got Charlotte, you've got Florida, you've got California, you've got Oregon, you've got, of course, a lot in that industrial Midwest, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, et cetera. So that's where they are now. We haven't got any updates about if there have been additional progress in the talks since they expanded the strike, but interesting to see the strategy that they're deploying here.
It's very interesting, yeah. I mean, I especially enjoy that factoid around what was going on with Ford and about how they're, able to flex up and down. It's actually one of the benefits, I believe, of the new strategy, which you've educated me on, versus a stand-up strike as opposed to this more targeted strike, that you can, expand and contract and target the particular people that are coming to you with different demands, contracts in order to benefit. So I'm curious, I mean, what do you think in terms of the movement? The fact if Ford is being much more forthcoming in some of the demands, maybe this one won't have to drag on 150 days, especially if they're going to ramp up the pain. Like parts distribution, we already saw how the chips crisis in 2021 devastated the American car market, and especially the big three. Their inability to import and to have the inputs into their cars just destroyed, overall the price and a lot of the profits and the bottom line that the company was already having. So if they're able to do this, I mean, you could cripple critical infrastructure so quickly.
Yeah.
For these cars.
Listen, I have no idea, but if I had to guess, there's a lot of pressure on these automakers right now. You have the freaking president, former and current presidents of the United States coming to Michigan, and, Biden overtly being on the side of the workers, Trump mixed bag, but that's a lot of pressure being put directly on you if you are a big three executive. Now you have the news that Ford is offering some significant concessions and getting at least part of the way there in terms of the worker demands. That applies additional pressure onto Stellantis and onto GM. And then when you have this, this strategy that sort of creates chaos and shows that they can last a long time with their strike fund is pretty full. Since they're not going on all at once, they can really stretch that strike fund. In a lot of ways, strikes are a game of chicken, right? Who's going to blink first? Who's going to say this pain is too great for me and really, have to give way and come to the table and give up some concessions? Right now, I think the auto workers have positioned themselves very well. Now, I should say there has been some dissent within the union of some of the workers really wanted everyone to go out at once and have a big show of force and really stand in solidarity together and And, I think Shawn Fain was sympathetic to that view, but ultimately decided this was the sappier tactic. There are risks to the stand-up strike strategy that is more targeted versus everybody going out all at once. The risks are that you don't have everybody participating in the same way. There can be a breakdown in solidarity. It requires a lot of discipline for every worker at every facility to know exactly what their part is and what the rules and guidelines are and what they're supposed to be doing when. So there is like a risk on the other side of that. But so far, I feel like the auto workers have a lot more leverage and power in this situation than the big three do. So one of the points of leverage that automakers and also like CNBC and the business press and whatever are trying to use is this idea that, oh, the strike is going to cause car prices to go up. Shawn Fain knocked that one down pretty easily when he was asked about it. Let's take a listen.
Companies chose to put us in this position because they've had 8 weeks to get a contract, and they chose for 7 weeks to screw around and do nothing. They got serious in the last week. This isn't on the UAW workers. When bad things happen and things that are happening right now, it's all because the companies. They own it. It's on their shoulders.
So you deny that it's going to hurt the consumers in the long run?
What's hurt the consumers in the long run is the fact that companies have raised prices on vehicles 35% in the last 4 years. Just our wages went up 6%. The CEO pay went up 40%. Profits have been in the billions, the hundreds of billions. They own all this. That's what's hurting the consumer.
So, it's pretty hard to argue with those numbers. Like, listen, our wages are not the problem. Because guess what? We've been getting screwed on wages ever since basically the 2008 recession, even before that. I actually put this up on the screen from Heather Long. She highlights that U.S. auto workers have seen their paychecks plunge further from 93 to 2023 than any other of the 166 industries we regularly track. In the early 90s, auto workers were the top paid rank and file workers. Now they are middle of the pack. And I think the title for that chart there where they say now auto workers, just another job, kind of says it all. The auto worker used to be the sort of gold standard, rock solid, middle class job. It was this, iconic industry where the understanding was if you worked there and you did the job, you were going to be able to have the basics of a stable middle class life. That has been eaten away. And so auto worker wages have suffered more than those of workers in any other industry. So for them to turn around and be like, oh, it's your fault that car prices are so high when they've been taking a haircut and when their labor makes up a grand total of like 5% of the cost of a new car, it just doesn't hold water.
It doesn't hold any water, as you said, and I think that the most important point is that these are not people who've been getting paid well. They've actually been underpaid for more than a decade. They got a massive haircut after 2008 and are just trying to keep pace with inflation, with any of the demands and all the flexibilities and all the things that the white-collar workforce and many blue-collar workers have been able to demand. They find themselves as part of America's critical security or critical economic infrastructure and are using, without them, they could have decided not to take the haircut and they would have all gone completely bust in 2008. They did the car makers, the big three, a big favor. And don't forget, all of us saved the auto industry, and I think that was the correct decision back then. But, one of the things is that they have just been able to make fantastic profits, and more importantly, the executives, the shareholders have all benefited. The workforce itself is the only one who has not, since I think GM, I believe, still owes billions of dollars to the U.S. government.
I think that's right.
Let's all not forget about what happened, not that long ago.
Yeah, very true. Okay. Very true. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.